Because Father once said to me, he said, look, don't know why you're bothering. When I'm dead, this will be yours. I must admit, I said, I'm sorry, Dad, don't want you dead, but this company will be dead before you are.
Hey guys, it's Matt Haycox here, and welcome to another episode of the Matt Haycox Show, where today we're doing one of our segments of The Ultimate Mentors, and we really do have today with us an ultimate mentor, one of the UK's greatest success stories in terms of business and as an individual. I always hate to refer to my notes when I'm doing these introductions, but there's so many important things to get across about Joe and Joe Foster and Reebok that I'm gonna have a little look at my notes, and I'm going to tell you that my guest today is Joe Foster, one of the most successful entrepreneurs of the 20th century. He founded Reebok with his brother Jeff in 1958. Makes me feel very old to know that, but I remember wearing it as a kid. And nowadays, Reebok's recognised and a loved brand around the world with really high-profile ambassadors, people like Alicia Keys, Conor McGregor, Ariana Grande, Jay-Z, to name but a few. And none of this would have been possible without Joe. It's an absolute pleasure to have him here today. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic to hear his story. There's going to be so much we can learn from him, and I'm really excited about this, Joe. So thanks a lot for being here.
Oh, it's fantastic. Thank you for inviting me now, which is about 7 days before the book comes out, so it's going to be good anyway.
So, I mean, tell me, let's rewind to childhood. I mean, would you ever have imagined as a child? I mean, I know you came from humble beginnings, but I mean, was there ever any inkling that you would have been a successful businessman? Never mind, an internationally successful businessman on the scale that you have been.
I don't think when you're a child, you're a kid, you're just normal. You're out with your friends doing friend thing. You don't even think of the future. You're too young to think of the future. You just want to have fun. And I born in Bolton, normal upbringing. However, I was 5 when World War II started. So whether you call that normal or not, I don't know, because education was in the front room of the teachers, because our school had been taken over for an air raid post. So we had no school. And so we said we had to go to the teachers' homes.
Well, did you particularly, given that you were 5, did you particularly know any different anyway? I mean, was that just the normal for you? I guess almost like in the way we talk about the new normal in this Corona era. But I mean, had you just found that from day one?
No, you wouldn't know any difference at the age of 5. It's normal. Whatever happened. And Father would work, and then he'd be in the home guard in evening. So we saw little of him, but Mother used to just bring us up, and everything seemed normal. The kids were in the street, you play it out. Okay, so the lights, there were no lights on, and everybody had the blinds down, so it's quite dark, especially in winter. But in summer, we had double summertime, so you could play out till 11 o'clock. That's it, they let you play out till 11 o'clock.
And I guess tell me a bit about you as a child. Were you a good learner? Were you naughty? Did you have some entrepreneurial streaks back then?
I think I was a good learner. I think that my brother wasn't. He was more sort of into athletics and sports. The only thing I could do, I could run fast at that age, and I had a big advantage because we had the J.W. Foster's company, and they made spike running shoes. Nobody, certainly not in my school class, had a pair of spike running shoes in those days. And it was in fact, in 1943, when I was 8, I won an 80-yard sprint. And I won a dictionary, a Webster's dictionary. And it's an American dictionary, that you wonder why. In 1943, middle of the war, was an American dictionary. However, I did keep that for a long while, and it becomes very important to the story. But otherwise, upbringing was, you got your sledge down the street and do whatever winter. Normal upbringing. Didn't even think about work or whether you could make a fortune or not those days.
So when did you start thinking about work? I mean, when did you finish school? Did you kind of quit as a teenager and go into work?
Yeah. I finished education at college in 1952, and I spent 1 year in the family business. I think my dad wanted me to be an accountant, but I'd spent a few days sort of when I was at college in an accountant's office, and that put me off for life, just sitting there making ticks on books and whatever. So I wasn't learning anything, I was just spending time. But I spent that 1 year in J.W. Foster's. J.W. Foster's had been started by my grandfather in 1895. And he started his business because in 1895 he was 15 and he made his first pair of track spikes. They called them pumps in those days, but track spikes. Because he was a cobbler, he'd learned his skills from his grandfather Sam, going way, way back. Probably got the idea because Sam used to repair cricket boots, and cricket boots had spikes. And it was more than likely he looked and said, why do you have spikes in this? And that's to give you grip. And I think that may have been a light bulb moment for Joe, because when he came back, of course, and at 15, he thought spikes in shoes would do me good.
And what took you from there to 1958 and the founding of Reebok then? How did it come about?
As I say, I spent 1 year in Foster's, and then we had national service. And I did 2 years in the RAF. Jeff did 2 years in the army. Surprising enough, whilst he was 2 years older than me, we both went in together because he'd had a deferment. Working, you could do it in those days. He had a deferment, so we were in the forces at the same time. We came out. I came out a little earlier, but we came out in 1955.
Were you together in it? As in, like, were you in the same?
No, he was in the army. I was in the RAF.
Oh, sorry.
I was in the posh lot. Yes, and he went to Germany though. I stayed in the UK. He went to Germany, and he saw Adidas, Puma, all these people, the different shoes. So when we came back, we looked at the company, J.W. Foster's, who had a fabulous history. The runners who were in the film Chariots of Fire, Harold Abrahams, Eric Liddell, and Lloyd Burley, they were all wearing Foster's shoes when they won the gold medals. And there've been many gold medals before that. Grandad was brilliant. He really did know how to promote his product. And when you talk about influence today, he was doing it in 1900. And so we had that, but we came back to this company, and this company was saying they were doing nothing because Grandad had built such a great business. Business just came in. Everybody came to them. And in those days, it was just sports people. It hadn't gone street. This was performance. So he'd done this, and my father and uncle, they were then running the company because Grandad died in 1933. I was born in 1935 on his birthday. So that's why I'm called Joe. He was called Joe. And Grandma insisted I'd brought my name with me, same day. So, but he built this great company. Father and uncle now taken it over. And for whatever reason, a bit like Addy Dassler and Rudy Dassler, they didn't get on. And they didn't get on to the point where they didn't speak to each other. In fact, there was a time when Jeff and myself had to drag them apart because they were ready to fight. And we tried to say, look, the business needs to move. It can't be doing what it was doing 10, 15, 20 years ago. Can't keep doing that. Look, this is what's happening. But either they couldn't, they wouldn't listen or they couldn't listen. Couldn't listen because they just couldn't work together. And so Jeff and myself really a little alternative. We thought if we're going to have a visit, because Father once said to me, he said, look, I don't know why you're bothering. When I'm dead, this will be yours. I must admit, I said, I'm sorry, Dad, don't want you dead, but this company will be dead before you are. He didn't like that, but you know, what can you do? We just learned a lot being in the forces. We were not the same shy sort of sons that he'd sent us away.
I mean, I was going to ask you how you felt being in the national service. I guess shaped you and changed you. I mean, obviously it made you more confident. I mean, do you think it made any other material changes to you that set you up for when you came out?
I think that being in the Scouts and then doing national service, and one almost followed the other, did teach you some disciplines, and it also taught you a bit of self-reliance. You didn't need anybody else. You could make your own way in life, and I think that did make a big difference to us. Certainly, we didn't like the idea of just settling down and just continuing what we did before we went in the forces. We saw the need, and I think that did build that difference. Yes, you do get discipline, but also you get freedom. You make your own decisions, and you know how to get around things. I spent probably half of my national service playing badminton, because that's the one. I was pretty good at badminton in those days, and I played for the Fighter Command. So I was all over the place playing badminton. I came back to Bordsey, where I was stationed, which was a signal station. We did radar. But, I came back there, and nobody ever knew I'd been away or anything. I wasn't even on the list to go and do some work. But anyway, that was the forces. And I say you learn an awful lot, and it had taught us to be independent. And so it was the point that once we couldn't make any sense with my uncle and father, it just made sense. Right, well, we've got to do it alone. So we went out in 1958 and set up our company called Mercury Sports Footwear.
And did you? I mean, was it a tough decision to make? Whilst you obviously felt that they weren't doing things right, and you had different ideas. I mean, I guess it still must have taken a step and a leap and some confidence to do it, or were you just so hell bent on the fact that they were doing it wrong that I'm doing this?
No alternative. It was. I think we've been away from family and from sort of you do as you're told. We wanted to. I think. It wasn't even those days make a difference. I think it was the fact that we were disgusted at what was happening with the company. And in those days, I didn't even know the depth of grandfather's business. It took a while to research as to what he had done, because there was nothing there to tell us how great he was. So we had this inspiration that, well, what did grandfather do? And he must have had an inspiration to do it. So bearing in mind he did it when it was a more difficult time, 1895, and it was only athletes then, so he was only sort of dealing with the club and other clubs and building his business that way.
When you set Mercury up, what were your aspirations or expectations at that time? I mean, was it just let's go out there and do things the way we want to do it, or was there ever a bigger game plan at play from the beginning?
Well, I guess you always dream a bit that we could be a big company and we could probably be the best in the UK. We can do this. They are not. We can have a go at it. And surprisingly enough, we started off with cycle shoes as against. We just didn't want to compete with J.B. Foster's. We thought, no, we'll move to the next town, which was Bury, which was 6 miles away. We found an old brewery for a building, and that in itself was amazing. The bottom floor had no windows. Being an old brewery, it had no windows, and I suppose at the time for a brewery, maybe that's how it worked. It had a big well in the middle. The second floor was okay. The top floor, the roof was so full of holes that we just couldn't use it, and it was full of buckets and tins and everything, just catching all the water. So we only had the middle floor, and we bought some second-hand machinery. The one good thing about it is, having been at Foster's, we knew machinery and we knew materials to buy. Plus, we also spent a couple of years at night school, Rossendale Valley. That taught us quite a bit about it, because all we knew before then was what we'd learned on the floor at Foster's. So we bought the machinery and we had to put it around the edges because the floor itself was like a bit dodgy. But it did the job. And we thought, okay, well, make cycle shoes. So we were advertising in, I think a magazine was cycling, and we did quite well. Funny story is that we picked up a couple of agents, because this is what Foster's never did. They never had an agent, and nobody's selling the product. They just wanted it to come through the door. And one agent was a cyclist, and he popped his head in one day and he bought out. He said, look, I'll be your agent around here if you like. So within a 50-mile radius of the factory, he put these shoes in the back, and he would cycle around and call on all the cycle shops selling shoes, and he did quite well. But our best agent was a guy who just he'd seen our advertising in cycling. He was in London, a Scotsman in London, and so we took him on. Yeah, that's fine. My God, did he sell shoes? They were piling him. We had to get some more staff. Since it was only Jeff and myself at that time, getting more staff was like a young boy from school. So we were going about 6 months, 9 months, fantastic. These orders are rolling in, and all of a sudden they stopped. What's gone wrong? And of course, we couldn't telephone him because, I mean, we're talking about 1950, early 1960s sort of thing, very early times. A month later, after no correspondence, we got a phone call from his landlady who said, I've forgotten his name now. Do you owe him any money? Because he's not paid his rent. He owes me some money. I said, well, we keep sending it. Yeah, what's the problem? And she said, well, he was killed in a road accident a month ago. And our business just went, boom. Just all of a sudden, no more orders from London. It just dropped. So we started making running shoes then. And that sort of got us going. But do you want to ask a question now?
Oh, so you can finish.
But I was saying in 1960 we had the problem with the name.
Well, so that was my question. You're taking the words out of my mouth. No, I was going to say, obviously, you were called Mercury at the time. Had the legal issues from memory. Was it someone else called Mercury?
Well, yes. I mean, the thing is, our accountant at that time said, look, if you're going to go anywhere with this name, you've got to register it. Otherwise, if somebody sees it's doing well, they'll just start making the same product. But you need to register. And so I went to see a patent agent. I was advised to see a patent agent. And they said, well, they found out it was registered, pre-registered. I think it was Lotus and Delta, who were a British Shoe Corporation company. And they offered it for £1,000. Well, we couldn't have raised £100 and mined £1,000 in 1960 to buy it. So he said, well, he pointed through his window. Nice day it was, maybe, and there was a sign there, Kodak. I said, Kodak? What's that? He said, it means nothing. Bring me a name that means nothing. He said, that's the best way to get it registered. But don't bring me one, bring me 10.
And how did you find Reebok then?
Well, Reebok, this is where the dictionary comes in.
Okay.
I was talking about earlier. We collected together about 6 or 8 names of, say, birds or animals, like cheetah and things like that. And I'm leafing through this book. I thought, I like something. It's a strong letter. I like it beginning with R. And I'm leafing through and I came across Reebok, which was a small South African gazelle. Oh, sounds right. And this is an American dictionary, so it's spelled R-E-B-O-K. Uh-huh. Had it been an Oxford English dictionary, it would have been R-H-E-B-O-K with that H. And I don't think it would have been quite so attractive with an H in it, but as Reebok. So I put this at the top of the list and sent it back to him and said, look, we need to be in love with this brand, and that's the one we want. It so happened it was the only one that came out that we could actually register, but we could only register it in the second book. Not book 1, but book 2 of the register, because he said, if somebody comes along and tells me they want to make shoes, or they do make shoes out of Reebok skin, I can't stop them saying that. 20 years later, he moved us into the first part of the register and saying, no, Reebok is a shoe.
And so it's interesting that you say that the spelling of it with an H wouldn't have felt as attractive as spelling it with a double E. I mean, how important do you think that name change has been on your incredible trajectory since then? And a lot of my audience, I often get questions asked about how do I name my business? What's the right name for my business? I can't decide between these 5 names. I mean, how important do you actually think the name is for the actual success of the business itself?
Well, I mean, I don't know what you would call it. We liked Mercury, and we had the winged messenger as our logo. So, we were quite happy with that. When I did find Mercury in the dictionary, it just struck a bell. It was like, and it was a small South African gazelle, a gazelle that was more or less describing what we wanted, something fast, something speedy, and 2 syllables, dead easy. And since I liked the letter R, anyway, it was great, and it's easy to see. It rolls off the tongue, easy. Reebok. It's good. So, I mean, that is our choice or our luck. Yeah, people ask questions about luck, and luck is a big thing for me. But that changed us. It also changed the winged messenger, because we could no longer use that for our logo.
So going back to the business model, you were selling shoes through the guy, taking on the agents. I mean, what other methods of growing the business did you use back then? And I guess how did the options available to you back then differ to somebody who may have been starting a similar business today?
Well, I think we've got to move forward a bit to 1968. I'd been wanting, for me, it was the big market. We were athletics. And we could go on probably all day talking about why did Reebok not, or why did J.W. Foster's not be the biggest supplier of football boots in the world? Because we have a letterhead. I think it's still upstairs, a letterhead. I'll probably show it you later. And that letterhead has 96 football teams listed. And this letterhead is from the 1920s. And the teams listed on there are every team that you could mention, apart from Tottenham and Chelsea. But any other team you want to mention in any of the divisions in England, Wales, Scotland, there were 96 in, plus rugby league teams as well. And they were supplying them, makers too, all these teams. And still to this day, I don't know why. We weren't, why Foster's didn't make football boots. But in those days, it was just a sport, I suppose, in 1920. Probably not a big sport, but they were in Bolton, and Bolton won the FA Cup 3 times in the 1920s, 23, 26, 29. I mean, I'm still sort of, don't know why. But anyway, to get back to, we were in athletics, to get into soccer, that's the American one, but football for us was very difficult because Adidas had come in and they came in big. By the time we were there in the 1960s, I used to go around to sports shops trying to sell my product, and they'd look at me and they'd say, Reebok? Why do I need Reebok? I've got Adidas, I've got Dunlop. And so, why did they need Reebok? And that was the answer all the time, because athletics, okay, it was good. We had a lot of athletics clubs, but it wasn't like soccer. Soccer was beginning to flow over onto street. Kids were wearing replica football shirts, and they had the 3 stripes down, and became very, very popular. And then the training shoes came out. Okay, we made training shoes, but we needed to get something, we needed to get a bigger market. And that's, to me, that's when I looked to America and said, this is a big market. Colleges, universities, coaches were gods in those days. And they all used to buy masses and masses of athletic shoes. As it, in the UK, in college or whatever, athletics wasn't a big thing. It was more academic, but so I wanted that. And in 1968, I took an option that was afforded to us by the Board of Trade. The Board of Trade wanted sports companies to export, and they offered us a free stand at the NSGA show, which is the National Sporting Goods Association of America in Chicago. They offered us a free stand, they pay our airfare, and they pay 50% of the hotel bill. It was like a no-brainer that, we've got to take this one. And I went across there with a friend who has camping and climbing shops. You might know, have heard of Ellis Brigham. Brigham has shops, yeah. Well, Bob Brigham, good friend of mine. In fact, but at that time, we were making a climbing boot for him to supplement our production. We got a climbing for him. So we went together. We had a great time. In fact, we spent a weekend in Bermuda afterwards. But we had a great time there. Bob took some orders, I didn't. And the guys said, they like our product, but where do you get it from? And I said, England. Yeah, England. New England? No, England. Oh, well, when you got somebody over here working behind them from, we really think your product is fantastic. And that was in 1968. It took me until 1979 to get a distributor, to find the right distributor. Okay, a lot happens in that time. Running, for instance, became something big in America. And what helped it become big was a magazine called Runner's World.
Oh, yeah.
And Runner's World, it not only did it get people out running, it also helped Nike, New Balance, Etonic, there's 3 or 4 more American companies grow, because the thing went absolutely massive. We were advertising in it, and I was getting some nice orders, small orders, but we needed to have a distributor over there. I'd had about 5 or 6 attempts. People, a guy called Brian Fernie in Los Angeles. There was an ex-Adidas distributor who also tried. And and there was somebody in Philadelphia who is in my book because we had a real tussle trying to get into America. But the answer came with Runner's World, because Runner's World, they used to put out, I think it's in the August edition, was rating the shoes. They had a shoe rating. And they would do 1, 2, 3, 4 in probably different categories. The training shoes, racing shoes, and spike shoes, they would rate them all. But it took about 3 years before the retail trade in America more or less forced him to change it. Because if you were number one shoe, there was a sudden big demand for that one shoe. So whether it be Nike, New Balance, or whoever, they could never produce that shoe. They were producing them overseas. So to get that shoe to the market took 6 months in volumes that were required. And then in another 6 months, everybody's got the shoes, and there's another number one.
Sure.
So they decided that they'd change this one to make it a star rating. And the top shoe would be 5 stars. There wouldn't be one, there'd be numerous. It could be 3 or 4 who get 5 stars. And I decided we've got to go for 5 stars, because that will give us some visibility on that market. And in 1978, it would be, we designed the Gold range. The Gold range was 3 shoes. Aztec was the running shoe, the road training shoe. Midas was the road racing shoe. And Inca was the spike. And we did very well at Edmonton in the Commonwealth Games. We did very well. But in 1979, that's when I was in the NSGA show again. I'd been every year, so I've been slugging this one for a long time. But it was 1979 when really running had become so big that people were really looking hard at us. I had a visit from Kmart. Kmart are a very big distributor in, a very big retailer in America. And a guy called Paul Fireman, who was running a small camping business in Boston, which was a distribution business. So both were interested. So I went back in May 1979, and I went to Kmart. And saw the man there. There was 100 different buyers, and my man was sitting amongst them. And he said, well, we'll take 25,000 pairs, but you've got to do it at a better price. I knew we had to do it at a better price because things were moving towards the Far East, and shoes were coming out of the Far East. My experience with the Far East had not been good. But I thought, well, they must be improving because Nike are coming out of the Far East and other shoes are coming out of there. And I had people approaching me to see if they could help. I also knew that 25,000 pairs was about half our annual production of the factory that we had. So, excuse me, we needed more than just to get the price down. We needed volume. And for the volume, I had a good friend at Barter, just down the road here in East Tilbury. It's not there anymore. And he said, look, we can do some production for you if you get some good orders. So we're moving up now, and I go from Kmart to see Paul Fireman. And Paul Fireman was very interested. He said, yeah, great stuff. He said, but we really needed to get a 5-star result. And he said, if you do, I'm in. And I liked him because you look at Kmart and you think 25,000 pairs, they'll just put them on the shelf. And if that shelf space doesn't sell enough shoes, we'll not get another order. If I do, we'll get another 25,000 pairs. But what would it do for the brand? So it was waiting for August, waiting for that report. We'd sent our 3 shoes to Bob Anderson. He was a publisher. And Runner's World then, you couldn't get it in England. You could only get it in America. So I phoned Paul on the day it was due to be released, the Runner's World. I said, Paul, go out and get a book and tell us how we're going on. An hour later, he came back and said, Joe, he said, Aztec got 5 stars. Brilliant. That was it for us. But he said, also, your other 2 shoes got 5 stars. So we've got 3 5-star shoes. That was an entry into the USA.
So I guess we've kind of covered 21 years probably during that time, then from 58 starting to 79 then. I mean, talk to me a little bit about the financing of the business, and when you set it up, how did you fund it? I mean, did you have the kind of knowledge of finance at the time? Was it tough when you were having to buy stock, larger portions of stock in from abroad? Did you even know what to do?
No. A simple answer was no. We were young, we were indestructible. And I look back now and I just wonder how we did it, why we did it. We just did it because it was there. It's like climbing Everest. We had to do something. We didn't think that deeply. I think if we'd have gone into this and thought through everything, made a big business plan, we may not have done it. We may have seen that, no, we couldn't finance it. It was probably halfway through the first year that we ran out of money and I had to go to the bank. And eventually the bank loaned us £200. But his favourite story was his friend had loaned Billy Butlin £500 to start his business. And he was more interested in telling me that, and then said, but I'll lend you £200. And I suppose really we did better than Billy Butlin.
So, I mean, one of the things I feels very important to me, and I guess how I've grown my business, or I guess enriched my life, is through alliances with the right partners, key strategic people, and obviously that's been something that has been that's made Reebok phenomenally successful. With your alliances and ambassadorships, etc., with various athletes. I mean, at what point did that start for you? And I mean, was it a conscious effort? Or did it kind of happen by accident, worked out, and then you realised you needed to do a bit more of it?
Well, I think the important thing about it is to make a good product. So we needed to be very, very close to our industry, if you will, to athletics. We needed to be close to that. So, and Jeff was very much involved in the Bury Athletic Club and the Bolton Athletic Club. As I said before, I was badminton, and badminton is not really athletics. So Jeff was very, very much involved in that. And we also grew because, as I told you, I went to the retailers, and the retailers sort of said, why do we need Reebok? So that got me thinking quite deeply. And it was really going to one of the events that we were sponsoring. We sponsored events, and you're seeing the athletes coming through, and it struck me that these are our customers. This is where I should be aiming my promotion that way. And so I did obtain a 3A's handbook in which were listed every athletic club in the country and the address, name and address of the secretary. So it seemed to me to be, again, no-brainer. I write to every secretary in every club in the country and offer them a discount, which they could either keep for themselves or give it to the club. And if they didn't want to do it, could they find someone in the club who wanted to do it? And we got an amazing amount of people coming back wanting to be agents. So at that point, we were selling direct to the athletes. And unsurprisingly, a short while after doing this, I get phone calls from the trade, from retailers, saying, people are coming in asking for Reebok, and we don't stock them, but we do know that you're selling direct. Well, we'll stock your shoes if you will stop selling direct. I said, look, I'm very happy for you to stock the shoes. You get wholesale price, which is, I said, we don't cut the price of our shoes to direct sell. The agent gets a little percentage, but if you want them, you'll get them at wholesale price. But I'm not stopping selling to the athletes. And I think it was only 2 turned me down. The rest started buying the shoes. So it's how can I say, it's looking around to find your business, and that drew us closer and closer to our business, and people began to take Reebok as the best, or equal to the best of any shoe on the market.
And back then, who were some big name athletes or big name people that you were making ambassadors or drawing strategic alliances with?
Back then, David Jenkins. I don't know if you remember David Jenkins.
No.
You know, he was not only the 400 champion in the UK, he was 400 meter champion in USA. He won the USA championship. Alan Pascoe, Donna Hartley. In fact, they did us very proud. Jeff Capes, you know Jeff Capes.
I know Jeff Capes. Yeah. Big hands.
Yeah, he was a big boy then. He's still a big boy now, but certainly not the same shape he was in then. So yeah, we had athletes, and they did help as far as, and of course once we got in with the clubs, it just grew. We didn't need to have great athletes. We just needed a good shoe and people that would be winning, not necessarily your international athletes, but people winning races in Reebok, and that was enough to influence others to buy our product.
And have you seen that kind of, I guess, influencer and ambassador world and financial relationships change over the years? I mean, going from, let's say, the mid 70s or whatever we were talking about then, through to today. I mean, again, to contextualize this, we're filming this in September 2020, and obviously despite I guess dire financial circumstances for many businesses and many individuals, there's still enormous deals are still going on out there, particularly in athlete endorsement, and many of the top name athletes you look at now, despite the massive earnings that they get, that those earnings are still dwarfed by the ambassador deals, the sponsorship deals that they do. I mean, I take it that wasn't really the case back then.
Back then, all we needed to do was to give the athletes shoes. That's all we needed to do. We didn't need to pay massive amounts. Adidas had been obviously paying good amounts to athletes. They, particularly in soccer, they paid a lot of money, and there was a lot of rumours going around of dollars in shoes and all those sort of things. I think it's before really and truly amateurism was became professionalism, and most athletes slowly became professional, really, because they were being paid. They had to be paid. Back when grandfather was producing his shoes and giving his shoes to people like Harold Abrahams, the athletes themselves had to be wealthy, because not many athletes could afford to go to these Olympic Games. Nobody bothered sponsoring. It was very much an amateur sport in those days. As everything dropped the amateur label, then money started to influence. And yes, you need influencers, but the biggest influence for Reebok really came with the aerobics.
I mean, do you think in the future we ever may see a U-turn on this? I mean, do you think there'll be a day where someone like Puma, who's just sponsored Neymar, 23 million quid, I mean, do you think they might look back and go, what the hell were we doing? You know what, sod this, we're going to ditch all this influencer marketing budget? No. And you think it'll just be higher and higher spending as more and more money's ploughed into sports?
Yes, they're entertainers, and it's now entertainment. It might be a sport, but it's just entertainment. No, people, this is what entertains people. It's like sport now. The fact that soccer and others, you can't get crowds there anymore. But television is such and so big that it will continue. And I think this is why now we're getting the Premiership and other leagues, they're playing without a crowd. And I think it'll be okay for the Premiership because it gets so much from television. I think some of the lower divisions could probably feel this very badly because they don't really get the money from sponsorship. The local builder may have a little sign up on the ground, but then again, they're not on television. So I think they're going to suffer. It could well be, I think, Premiership, Championship, maybe League One will not be too bad, but I think the other leagues are going to suffer having no crowds, having no income.
So we've blasted through 21 years of Reebok so far. and there's been phenomenal growth. There's been entry into new markets. What was your decision making process during these times? Was there a lot of strategic decision making? Were you going with your gut? Were you young lads flying by the seat of your pants, or maybe a mix of all of it?
I don't think we were ever clever at strategic planning. I think we saw opportunities, and when you see an opportunity, you take it. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. As I say, I wanted to get to America. In order to do that, I needed distribution in the UK, because if I was doing it, I couldn't do America. And I had a good friend called Derek Shackleton. He was a very good salesman, and he was a salesman for a company called Lawrence Sports. They're out of business, and that became a problem for me. But Lawrence Sports only made football boots, and we made training shoes. So he suggested, why don't they act for us on the UK market and become our distributors, which was the biggest market as far as we were concerned. But it did then release me to be able to concentrate more on America. What could I do and how could we get in there? About 2 years into the agreement, they were buying the bulk of our product. When Shaq decided to leave, and he went to Barter, and this is my connection with Barter, but he took 2/3 of the salesmen with him. And Lawrence Sports, they did about 3 or 4 stupid things. The first one was allowing him to go. They should have certainly known that he was the keystone to their sales. Secondly, because boots were changing to being injection molded from just having a normal sewn-on sole, they elected to buy a big machine, which was late arriving. They built an additional piece of the factory to put it in and found it was too small. By the time they got boots onto the market, they'd missed it. I think they didn't get any boots ready until about September. And of course, you've got to be there in July to get the football market. This, of course, affected the business totally. And whilst they were still selling out some of our shoes, they had at least, I think it was about 2,000 in stock. And we could see they were going out of business. And so it was a mad chase down there, because they weren't paying for the shoes, to pick up those shoes and bring them back. So we had 2,000 pairs of shoes unpaid for and no production. All of a sudden, 75% of our production had gone. So that was a problem we had to overcome. Okay, the first thing we did, we went around to every school, mailed every PE teacher in the schools to say, look, we've got all these shoes, and start selling them direct. I think we sold them in just over a month, maybe a little over, and we got more money for them than we would have done from Lawrence Sports. So in a way, we managed to rescue a situation, but with no production. Funnily enough, the guy who'd gone to Barter from Lawrence said, look, Barter wants some training shoes. So he gave us some orders, and these are the connections you need, because he knew what had happened. They gave us 200 pairs, I think it was 200 pairs a week to make, and I had other people, they got Stylo came, they wanted some shoes. So we pulled up, and Bob Brigham, we've been making his climbing boot, he put some more orders in. So, and I think within about 6 weeks, we got our production back again, just by people coming to us, and then it was a matter then of building up again. But shortly after this, a company down in London, Carter Pocock, they obviously knew of us and knew what had happened, and they wanted to take on the distribution. So it was a bit of a challenge. Can I give this distribution? Mind you, Lawrence had taken on global. They wanted to take global because they wanted to get to America as well. On this occasion, I just let them have the UK, and that worked all right. They sort of took that up, but it was a big dip in our, what do you do with it? Well, we just had to keep on going.
So obviously a lot of the stories that you've been telling me, a lot of the strategies that you implemented were fantastically successful. I mean, I guess my background and my ethos is very much about learning from failings and hopefully not repeating those mistakes again, and but certainly learning from other people's failings and hopefully not making them yourself. Have you got? I mean, when you look back, what were some major setbacks in those early days? Some big mistakes you made, and some things that you think you really learned from.
Well, I think I learned some lessons before making a mistake. One of the things that we did do is you could go to the British United Shoe made machinery, and they would give you the machine on lease. So you got half of these sort of production lines. Half of them were leased machines. And in our early days, there were a lot of companies going out of business because production was moving to the Far East. And when you get production moving to the Far, your production going out, and they're stuck with these machines, which they've got to pay the lease on. And of course, if your company can't get enough production, you go out of business. And you go out of business because you've got these leases you can't pay. I used to go around to the sales. They'd send us the auction people would send us a catalogue at least once a month, and you go around there and you just look at the machinery, and there were big gaps where those machines had gone back. So I think that was a lesson that we learned. Don't go in for that. We'd rather buy a second-hand old one, which is not quite as good, but at least we won't go out of business if we get a problem. So those were lessons. We did have a number of times that I've told you about Lawrence. We also, when we decided to become Reebok with our patent agent, and we got the name, he also said, "Well, you've got to register it now." And okay, we've not got a lot of money, so he said, "If you don't register it, okay, there's UK. There's Europe, there's America, and Japan. These are big sort of influential areas. You've got to have it." So we took his advice and went there, and we owed him a lot of money. And it so happened we didn't pay him on time, so they just put a winding up order on us. Like they didn't even asked for money, they didn't even say you've not paid, just because we didn't pay on time. And it often confuses me when somebody sort of helps you to get a new name, and then sort of within, I think, 2 months of doing that, they put you in a winding up order. It so happens that my accountant knew a very good lawyer, and that lawyer was very good for Reebok for a long time. It's called Derek Waller. He is in the book. And I went to see him because when I saw the account, I said, "Winding up order, what does that mean?" I mean, who knows what a winding up order is when you're about 26, 27. It's like, oh, well, it means that you're out of business if you don't settle it, or if you don't find a way to settle it. And he said, "You need to go and see a solicitor." I said, "I have a very good one." I said, because he said he was acting for somebody that they were against, who was acting on the opposite team, and he said, "I don't know how he got a draw, but he did." So because we had 3 aces out of 4, and he managed to get a draw. He said, "Go see him." An unusual man, a deep thinker, and he said, "Okay, yes, we'll do this," and so he did it for us, and he got it thrown out because of technicality. And he said, "All we need to do now is offer them a payment schedule," which we did do. And I thought, yes, but I've got to pay you, Derek. It was 12 months before he sent me an invoice. So, I mean, it's those people who genuinely sort of know.
Yeah.
It would have been useless had he sent me an invoice in sort of 2 weeks and expected me to pay it. But he
and how different things could have been if I guess if you hadn't had him, if you'd have lost the case and lost the name.
Absolutely. I mean, it would. It always amazed me why they didn't come to me and say, "Look," because it's not as though I'd bought a product off them, which they had spent money on. This was just purely and simply going to a lawyer, or as a patent agent. So yes, it was a surprise to me. But it's getting through those situations. This is where your luck comes in. I'm in the right man. Something happening. And when we talk about struggles. And 10 years, 11 years trying to get into America. And I went through so much. I've been over in America so many times trying to do this. And I realized I had to find a key holder, somebody who could do it. And finding Paul Fireman, that had to be lucky, because when I did go back to see him after stories like this come sort of in all bits and pieces, because after we'd had our 5-star, I decided we needed that volume. Barter would put the volume in, but I needed to go to the Far East to see their production, and that in itself was quite a journey. I took a ticket which my secretary had found through our travel agent, and it was around the world in 80 days or less. First class standby for £600. So instead of just a ticket out to Korea and back again, I decided, well, I could go around and I could pay a visit to Paul Fireman and whatever. Good adventures on way. Tehran, we didn't go to the terminal. We didn't go to the terminal. But see, I do need my memory over there. We didn't go to the terminal. We just sat on the tarmac. And 3 days after we'd been there, the Iranians took the American hostages for, I think they were there for about a year and a half, took hostages. So we arriving in Hong Kong, which was one of our next stops, I got a call from the guys who were in Korea to say, whoops, Joe, don't come. We're all in Taiwan, we're not in Korea, because President Park has just been assassinated. Oh, so these were the adventures. And eventually I did end up in Korea 2 days later, he said, because, nothing happened. Then I carried on. I went to LA, and I met up with Fred Perry's son, who, I don't know what he really wanted. I think he wanted to put some shoes into the Fred Perry sort of production, whatever. But he lived in Ginger Rogers' house, was all that. So that was an interesting visit. And seeing Ginger Rogers' studio, where she had this nice floor. And then went on to see Paul Fireman. And when I got to see Paul Fireman, Boston Camping, which was his small company, they dissolved it. He was on his own. His brother and his brother-in-law had gone doing something else. And I thought he was just doing a bolt-on, but he wasn't. And anyway, where were we on this story? What was the question? See, this is
I have no idea. but no, I've got
this is
another
what
question.
I warned you about in the beginning.
Don't worry. Well, I've got another question to go on to. It's so good. Well, let's talk a bit about you, Joe, the person. Then, I mean, I guess you've had a phenomenal career, a phenomenal story. What motivated you back then, and I guess what are you like now? I mean, are you still driven? Are you still motivated? Have you still got things you want to achieve now?
I think this is a question you could probably ask Julie rather than me. I guess in a way that. Once you've got the passion, once you've got the feel, once you're on the road and the journey, it's not just one step, it's step after step after step. And once you're doing that, you need to succeed. You can see success, you know where it is, it's how to get it. And like I say, it's like getting these key holders who can open the door. And I think this is where I sort of was on with the last question, when I ended up with Paul Fireman, because Paul Fireman was one of those people. I got to the point where we had 3 5-star shoes. We had production we could get apart from our factory at barter. And we were on the way to get Korean production, which would get the right price. So these were the tools that I was able to hand to Paul Fireman, because on the American market, you really needed an American who knew his market, who knew the distribution. So that was the first part of the key holders that we were able to meet. And Paul was doing very nicely, selling the shoes. We went to the NSJ show in 1980, and I was there and took a lot of orders and went back up to Boston, where Paul was analysing this through so we could get an order to barter. Because when I flew back, I didn't fly back home. I went to London and then was driven from Heathrow to East Tilbury to meet up with barter. I was a bit of a wreck by then. It was an overnight flight and you're trying to talk to people. But we got some arrangement there that they would handle the first orders, 20,000 pairs. And went back home. And whilst I've been away, my brother was taken ill. He was sick. It so happened it was stomach cancer. And he ended up dying on the 6th of March. I'd been at the NSJ at the 7th of February. So I'd only just got back when he was taken to hospital and when he died. So my problem is that Jeff had looked after the factory. That's all he wanted to do. So he would do the development of the shoes, I would do the design, and I would do the marketing and all the other things that were necessary to drive the company forward. But what I needed then is because Jeff should have gone down to barter to give them the patterns and work with them to develop the shoes, and he wasn't there anymore. So my problem is that being driven, it wasn't a matter of sitting down and saying, oh my God. It was tragic, remarkably so, and very difficult at the time. But I had made the acquaintance with barter, and there's a young man down there who was working on our shoes, and I managed to persuade him to come up and take over what Jeff did, and that was to develop the shoes to make sure that it went down onto the production. I managed to get him to do that. The foreman of the factory, I got him to take over the running of production, to look after production. And I got a young girl who would work for me on a different project. She came in to run the office. So that was taken care of. Then I then had to go down to barter with this young man as well and get them to make the shoes. So that was the one part. But I also had to now connect with the people in Korea on what they were doing, and with Paul Fireman in America, who was newly appointed our distributor. So it became quite how many balls in the air. But there was no way you could sort of say, I can't do this. It was a matter of, no, we'll get on and carry on. Problem is that barter made the 20,000 pairs of shoes, shipped them, which is fine, because they gave credit, which was something that 20,000 pairs of shoes, you need a lot of credit to do that, but they give them credit. However, during the first month, a lot of failures were occurring in the shoes. And Paul was on the telephone, Joel, these shoes are falling apart. And it was a new rubber called EVA, which was a plastic, not made out of rubber itself. It was made of, it was very light in weight, but it was quite new on the market. And barter in those days had their own rubber factory. So they made this themselves, and they hadn't cured it quite properly because they were just on a learning curve. Okay, big problem. Eventually, Paul came over and we met up with barter, and barter wanted half price, but eventually they settled for nothing. They said, no, the shoes are wrong. They'd also made a change in the pattern, which they shouldn't have done. So Paul Fireman had 20,000 pairs of shoes, not all bad. But what he was able to do is anything came back, he just exchanged it. And that kept him going while we could get the Korean production online. But the Korean production's fine, and it was really good stuff. Trouble is, you have to pay for it. You have to pay for it up front. They won't ship unless they've got a letter of credit, unless they know. So that was another game changer, because Paul then needed finance. This sort of business, he'd come out of his own business, but it soon absorbed whatever money he had. So we met 2 or 3 people, but and didn't get anywhere. But Paul had a friend who knew Stephen Rubin, and I don't know if you know Stephen Rubin. He owns majority on JD Sports.
Okay.
Pentland Industries is the industry, and what Stephen is ASCO, and ASCO were out in the Far East actually supplying shoes to the shoe trade, working to the shoe trade through ASCO. So he didn't provide that much money for Paul, just a bit, but what he did provide was a credit line, and that credit line was a big one. And when it got to 20 million, Stephen was worried because the credit, 20 million, Paul hadn't got that. Stephen was a bit nervous about it, but that's how we managed to take the 5-star shoes and build a distribution business in America. And I guess the lesson we talk about, you mentioned funding early on, you've really, if you're thinking about a business, you've got to think, how are you going to fund that business? And if you don't have it yourself, the banks will only follow you so far. And the banks need as much security as you can. So that is important, especially when you think that Reebok went from $9 million to $30 million revenue, to 90 million, to 300 million, to 900 million in successive years. So that is an incredible growth.
100%.
And the money that takes is incredible. Fortunately, if you keep growing, you usually can keep in front of the tidal wave of having to pay for it. You can keep in front of it. But if you slow down, it could overtake you.
Sure.
So you've got to be careful about that. But because they were made in the Far East, there was a good profit, and that allowed that side of the business to take care of itself. However, it wasn't then the finance that became the problem. The problem became, how do you get the product to go from 30 million to 900 million in about 3 years? That growth, in fact, the growth from 300 million to 900 million in 1 year is in itself a problem.
That's challenging, isn't it?
A bit more luck came along here because Nike, at that time, they had just overrun themselves and they got into problems, and they had to cut their production. And so their cut of production was absorbed by Reebok. And so this has to be, when I say an amazing amount of luck, these things have to be lucky. You can't plan them. Okay? Paul Feynman, we were talking, and many times we were talking, because the demand was such. And Paul said to me, he said, Joe, he said, I know how to stop it. I said, but if I do, I don't know how I could start it again. And that was the demand for the aerobic shoe. Because that aerobic shoe, because Arnold Martinez saw it in California, in Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles studios took it up, a lot of film stars and A-listers saw the product, were in the product, and it became a woman's shoe, as I mentioned.
Sure.
And women had never had a sports shoe before, so this came pure women. Went to street, and once it had gone to street, it was enormous. So it's, how do you keep up with that? But that drove the company to 3.6 billion before I left.
Tell me about your exit then. What brought that about? You know, had it been planned?
Well, I think what you have to learn in this is when you've not had enough, but when you've very little more to add to the company. For me to, I say retire, and I say this a few times, that retiring is one thing, but it is a bit like the Eagles with Hotel California. You know, you can check out, but you can never leave. And that's more or less it. That whilst I checked out and stepped back, there was always somebody wanting to know something, what happened here. So I'm still involved with Reebok. And this is 30 years after being part of the team. And it was necessary for people like Paul Fireman, Arnold Martinez in particular. They're the people who could drive it forward. Paul was, say, lucky in the fact that I'd given him the brand to work with. Arnold Martinez gave him a new category to work with, and finding a new category is, well, it's one of those are the strokes of luck. You can't make a new category; it has to happen. And aerobics happened. Cycling, I think, is probably now coming back as a big category, and certainly Peloton on the on the bikes. Julie has a bike and does this. Well, it's in France, so she can't do it at the moment, and we're stuck here for a while. But that seems to be a growing category. But does it grow as big as aerobics grew? I don't know. I don't think so.
And so you say it was about knowing when the right time to leave was. I mean, how long had you been kind of building up to that exit?
Well, I had been traveling because I really, once we gave Paul USA, I had the rest of the world. I had global. So I was going around the world probably 3 times a year. And I was at 35,000 feet, more than I was at ground level. And that travel to build all the distribution. And it got to the point where you've done this, you've built it. America was building big. And I think America wanted then to see if they could take over international. So, I don't think they did a good job of taking over international, but I think that's what they wanted. So they wanted to appoint their own people. It was obviously preferred to run it all from Boston at that time. And I thought, well, I just don't want to be at 35,000 feet, a flying ambassador. I don't mind being an ambassador, and I suppose I've been that ever since. But I thought now is the time to let other people take on the company. And it just seemed the right time for me.
And I mean, I know you say you haven't left. 30 years on, still haven't left. But I mean, was there I mean, did you know you weren't going to leave? You were just going to check out and not leave, or did you? I guess did you fear you were going to miss it?
Well, I think it was a bit of both. It was good to take 3 years off and go to Tenerife and just swan about and do as little. Well, we did 1 or 2 things, but as little as possible. And you don't want to get tied up again into a business which is going to take your life totally. It was time to probably settle down, do some other things. But then the odd phone call comes in. They had problems in South Africa. Apartheid had started all this, and so we need you. In fact, I got subpoenaed to go to South Africa for the opposition against Reebok. And then they had a problem with the IRS, the Inland Revenue, Internal Revenue Service, IRS. They were questioning the agreement that I had and who should actually own the brand. So they didn't want me to talk to the IRS, and the IRS wanted to talk to me. So there was a lot of things. They came over to the UK, and we went down to London to Trafalgar Square to meet the Inland Revenue, to talk with Inland Revenue. Memory I have of talking with Inland Revenue is they said, "Oh, America, we have very little success with arguments with America," and that was the top people in the Inland Revenue at that time. We have very little success. So. It did continue, and well, Julie and I did a few things later on. Did some bags, mainly because we were traveling. We thought, well, why not do some work for Reebok? And as it's gone on later and later, it's become a question of, well, what's the history? And one of the reasons for the book is the fact that the history is a very mixed bag. There's a lot of people think that what we did was change the name of J.W. Foster into Reebok, and a lot of people have written that, and it's wrong. We left the company, we started our own company, and there are many other things that is down there in history. But there's a photograph of Joe Foster, which I presume was either me or my grandfather, but it's neither of us. And it's one of the serious photographs that are in Wikipedia. So we're hoping that we can really get the book going well, particularly in America as well as here.
And obviously, you mentioned the book, which is called Shoemaker.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm sure all the fantastic stories you've been telling us today are going to be in there, and plenty more that we've not had time to listen to. But when do you? I mean, where can people get the book? When's it going to be out? Where can they find it?
Well, you can find the book on Amazon, and it'll be on all the leading bookstores. It will be there. But because of COVID, if you want a personalised signed book,
I certainly do.
You have to get it from us. That's the only way. So Julie will tell you the address. What's that?
Have we got a web address, Julie?
Yeah, www.jwfosterheritage.com.
So www.jwfosterheritage.com. If you want to get a signed copy of Joe's book, he will, I guess, go on the website, send them a message, and he'll do you a hand-signed copy.
That's right.
Mine's the first one, though. Mine's the first one.
Okay, no doubt.
Well, listen, Joe, it's been fantastic having you here. I've loved listening to your stories. I'm sure the guys at home have loved listening to the Reebok story as well. And I guess it's whetting everyone's appetite for the book. So fantastic. I hope the book launch goes fantastic. I look forward to reading it myself and hearing a lot more. Guys at home, I hope you enjoyed listening to Joe as much as I enjoyed talking to him. And I'm sure many of you guys are going to be rushing out for the book as well. If you like the interview, press like. As always, if you don't subscribe to the channel, make sure you press subscribe, or if you're listening on the audio versions, subscribe on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you guys listen to your podcasts. And I look forward to coming back to you again in the future with another fantastic guest like Joe. Thanks a lot for being here, buddy.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes, it really has. Thank you very much.